Right now, when you get sick, you do something so automatic you don't even think about it. You reach for a bottle, a little orange bottle, or a foil strip of pills. You swallow one with a mouthful of water, and a few hours later, the pain is just gone. For more than 99% of the time human beings have existed, that bottle did not exist. There was no pharmacy, no doctor down the street, no word for infection or bacteria or virus. A scratch you wouldn't even notice today could swell, blacken, and kill you in a week. A bad tooth could end your life. For over 300,000 years, every single one of your ancestors got sick, got hurt, and faced it with nothing but stone, plants, and each other. So what did they actually do? The answer is stranger and far more brutal than you think. And some of what they figured out is sitting in your medicine cabinet right now. Let's start before the first human ever got sick, because the urge to treat yourself isn't a human invention. It's older than our species. In the forests of Tanzania, when a chimpanzee's gut fills with parasitic worms, it does something bizarre. It finds one specific plant, Aspilia, and swallows the leaves whole, without chewing. The leaves are covered in tiny rough bristles. As they pass through the gut, they physically snag the worms and drag them out of the body. The chimp isn't eating, it's deworming itself. Scientists have a name for this: zoopharmacognosy, animals dosing themselves. Elephants and gorillas eat clay to soak up toxins and settle their stomachs. And in 2024, researchers watched a wild orangutan named Racus do something they'd never recorded before. He had a deep, open wound on his face. He chewed the leaves of a plant known to be antibacterial and pressed the paste directly onto the wound. 5 days later, it had closed. Within weeks, it healed to a small scar. No human taught him that. So here's the first thing to understand about ancient medicine. Our ancestors didn't invent the instinct to heal. They inherited it, and it's still in you. The next time you're sick and every cell wants to lie down, go still and eat nothing. That's not weakness. That's a program older than humanity, telling your body to conserve everything and fight. But instinct only gets you so far. At some point, humans started doing something animals never could. They started carrying medicine with them. And we have proof: a frozen body. In 1991, hikers in the Alps found a man melting out of the ice. He'd died 5,300 years ago. We call him Ötzi. When scientists opened him up, they found his gut crawling with whipworm, a parasite that causes cramping and diarrhea. And then they found what he was carrying. Tied to his belongings were lumps of a fungus called birch polypore. That fungus contains a compound that kills whipworm. Sit with that. A man frozen for 5,000 years was carrying the exact treatment for the exact parasite inside his own body. That's not luck. That's a pharmacy. Ötzi was also covered in 61 tattoos, and about 80% of them sit directly on what we now call acupuncture points, clustered over the joints that scans show were eaten up with arthritis. Targeted pain treatment, possibly 2,000 years before acupuncture supposedly began. And the eeriest detail of all? The growth lines in his fingernails show he'd been seriously ill 3 separate times in the last 6 months of his life. His own body kept the medical records for us. Now, here's where it turns. Some of what they used didn't just sort of work. It works so well we still use it today. Honey, the oldest surgical text on Earth, the Egyptian Edwin Smith papyrus, mentions honey as a wound dressing around 500 times. And the Egyptians didn't even keep bees. They were scraping it out of wild hives, smearing it onto open wounds, and watching those wounds refuse to rot. They had no idea why. We do. Honey is so low in water and so acidic that bacteria can't survive in it, and bee enzymes release a slow trickle of hydrogen peroxide, a disinfectant, a 4,000-year-old prescription, and right now, tonight, hospital burn units are treating patients with medical-grade Manuka honey. The dressing in an ancient Egyptian's hand is the same chemistry a surgeon reaches for in the 21st century. But honey is one thing. Antibiotics, real modern antibiotics, those are supposed to be a 20th century miracle. Alexander Fleming, penicillin, 1928. Except the bones say otherwise. When scientists analyzed the skeletons of ancient Nubians from Sudan, who lived around 1,500 years ago, the bones did something they shouldn't. They glowed under ultraviolet light. The glow was tetracycline, a real broad-spectrum antibiotic, the same drug a doctor might hand you today. How? Their grain was colonized by a soil bacterium that produces tetracycline, and when they fermented that grain into a thick, sour beer, the drug exploded. And this wasn't a one-time accident. It's baked into their bones from childhood. The levels spike between ages 2 and 6, which means the fermented grain was a weaning food. Babies were getting doses through their mother's breast milk. An entire civilization was dosing itself with antibiotics 1,600 years before we believed antibiotics existed. They didn't have the word for it, but they knew the golden brew made the sickness go away. So far, this all sounds almost gentle. Fungus, honey, beer, that's about to end. Because at some point, fighting sickness meant cutting into the living body. With stone, start with your teeth. At a site called Mehrgarh, in what's now Pakistan, archaeologists found skulls from 9,000 years ago with holes drilled into the molars. Not after death, while the person was alive. The tool was a flint tip spun by a bow drill, the same device used to start fires and drill beads. Someone pressed that spinning stone point into a living tooth and bored out the decay. There was no anesthesia. There was nothing to dull it. You were held down, and you felt all of it. And we know they survived, because the teeth kept wearing down for years afterward. This wasn't a one-time experiment. It was a tradition that lasted 1,500 years. They had fillings, too. A 6,500-year-old jaw from Slovenia has a cracked tooth sealed with beeswax, and a 13,000-year-old tooth from Italy was packed with tar, plant fiber, and hair. A Stone Age filling, antiseptic, and plug-in one. Your dentist's chair is frightening enough with Novocaine. Now picture it with a flint drill, 2 strangers pinning your arms, and a stick clamped between your teeth. And if a tooth sounds bad, they went further. Much further. They cut off limbs. For decades, scientists were certain complex surgery was impossible before farming and cities. Then, in a cave in Borneo, they found a skeleton from 31,000 years ago. The lower third of its left leg was gone. Not broken. Cleanly, surgically removed. Probably when this person was a child. That is the oldest known surgery on Earth. Tens of thousands of years before the wheel, before agriculture, before writing. And the staggering part, the bone had healed and regrown. This child survived the amputation, and then lived another 6 to 9 years, in a tropical jungle, one of the worst places on the planet to keep a wound from going septic. Whoever did this understood blood loss, amputation, and infection in the Ice Age. And they didn't only remove body parts, they replaced them. On a 3,000-year-old Egyptian mummy, the daughter of a priest, researchers found a missing big toe replaced with a prosthetic, carved wood and leather, jointed so it could bend, and refitted several times to match her foot exactly. It has wear marks. She walked on it. When scientists 3D printed a replica and fitted it to volunteers missing the same toe, it gave back almost 90% of their natural movement. A custom hinged, adjustable, artificial limb. 3,000 years ago. But the most extreme thing our ancestors ever did, the one that sounds flat out impossible, wasn't on the teeth or the legs. It was on the skull. It's called trepanation. Cutting, scraping, or drilling a hole into the skull of a living human being to release the pressure of a head wound. Or sometimes for reasons we will never fully understand. You'd assume nobody walked away from this. You'd be wrong. Huge numbers of these skulls show smooth, regrown bone around the hole, the unmistakable proof the patient lived for months or years afterward. And here's the fact that should not be possible. The Inca, performing brain surgery with bronze and stone, had patient survival rates between 75 and 83%. 400 years later, surgeons in the American Civil War, with steel instruments and germ theory, lost roughly half of their skull surgery patients. Stone Age brain surgery was twice as survivable as Civil War brain surgery, and some patients came back for more. A single skull from Jericho has 4 separate trepanation holes, every one of them healed. This person survived being trepanned 4 times. Let me be honest with you, because this part matters. This wasn't magic. Most of ancient medicine didn't work. For every drilled skull that healed, there were people who died screaming under a flint blade, rotted from a simple wound, or were treated in ways that killed them faster. But some of it worked, and some of it worked better than anything that replaced it for the next 2,000 years. But here's the thing. After all of it, the fungus, the drills, the saws, the holes in skulls, the single most important medical discovery our ancestors ever made wasn't a tool at all. It was each other. In a cave in Iraq, scientists found the skeleton of a Neanderthal we call Shanidar 1. He died around 50,000 years ago, and his body was a catalogue of disaster. Blind in one eye from a crushing blow to the head, one arm withered and amputated, a crippling limp, and almost completely deaf. A deaf, half-blind, one-armed man in a world full of predators that hunted by sound and by weakness. He should have died young. He couldn't hunt. He could barely forage. He couldn't even hear danger coming. Instead, he lived into his 40s, old for a Neanderthal, which means that for years someone fed him, someone protected him, someone refused to leave him behind. That is the real birth of medicine, not the stone blade, the decision to keep a person alive who could give nothing back. And it isn't even unique to us. It's older than our species. The urge to sit beside someone who's sick, to bring them water, to stay, it predates language. It predates fire. It might be the oldest human thing there is. So you'd think the story from here is simple. We got smarter, we got healthier. Progress. That's not what happened next. Because when humans stopped wandering and started farming, settling into villages crammed together, living on grain, we didn't get healthier. We got sicker than we had ever been. Crowding bred new diseases that leapt from our animals. Living in our own waste bred more. And the grain-heavy diet rotted our teeth. Cavities are, basically, a disease of farming. It's almost certainly no coincidence that the world's first dentists at Mergar appear at the exact moment those people were learning to farm. A huge amount of what we call ancient medicine wasn't humanity fighting some old, natural enemy. It was humanity scrambling to survive the new diseases our own progress had unleashed. Tonight, when something hurts, you'll reach for that little bottle without a second thought. You'll swallow a pill that took 10,000 years of drilled teeth, cracked skulls, fermented beer, and frozen men carrying fungus to finally arrive at. Every ancestor who survived long enough to hand their body down to you did it with none of it. They did it with sharpened stone, with leaves and honey and luck, and with someone willing to stay beside them in the dark when the fever came. You are the first humans in 300,000 years who get to be sick and simply expect to get better. The whole brutal, bloody, astonishing history of being human got you to a place where pain is just an inconvenience. And most of us will never even know how recently that was true.